Hey everybody, it's Peter, and this one's going to be a fun one. This is the Kawasaki Z125, a little 125cc motorcycle, and I'm going to compare that to the Piaggio Liberty 150, a little 150cc scooter. Now, the funny thing is, although these are basically the same size engine, almost no one cross-shops them, but I'm going to do a video to compare them both anyways to show you the differences and how design differences really make a difference in how you experience the vehicle. Because if you're looking for something that's fuel efficient, fun, lightweight, easy to add to your garage, these are both great options, but they're really going to appeal to different people, and I'm going to help you explain how the functional differences of these bikes help them appeal to different groups, so you can decide which little fun thing you want to add to your garage. Now, I'm filming here at Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, Jim Gilbert's Power Sports, and they give me complete access to their entire vehicle lineup, whether it's the Kawasaki lineup, the Piaggio Vespa lineup, the Piaggio e-bike lineup, or their vehicles. If you have questions about any of those, feel free to let me know in the comments below, and make sure you subscribe because I will answer your questions both in the comment section and in future videos. So let's get going with this review. For this review, what I'm going to do is start by talking about this Z125, and then we're going to relate it and compare it to the scooter here to show you some of the differences and how it functionally is quite a bit different. So let's start by talking about what this is. For a lot of people, they say this is a scooter with gears, and it's really not that. And one of the key things is, as soon as a lot of people here found out that I was going to be talking about this bike, they all had to tell me that this thing wheelies. You cannot wheelie on a scooter, at least not well, and I definitely can't. So this thing is a whole different character, but a lot of people assume that also this is maybe a kid's bike, and it's not. This is a road legal bike. You have to be, driver's license eligible, like 16 here in New Brunswick to be able to drive it. And I'm about 6 feet tall, so I'm fairly tall, but you can see as I sit across this, it's actually pretty normal size. I've got a comfortable lean here. We talked about the Z400 in a recent video on this channel, and if I put the kickstand out of the way here, you can see I'm still fairly comfortable here. I've got a sort of typical sport bike kind of feel. I'm not leaned over on the handlebars, I'm pretty upright here, but I've got a lot of control of this bike. It's very lightweight, and that's what makes it a whole lot of fun. This really is a motorcycle downsize that you can just ring it out, you can find all the limits on it, and it's an absolute blast to drive, to just have fun on. So scooters are going to be a different kind of fun. We're going to talk about that in a second, but let's look at some of the practical things about this bike before we compare it to the scooters. So I always say if you want to look at the purpose of a motorcycle or a scooter, specifically motorcycles, you want to look at the front wheel, and it kind of tells you everything you need to know about what it's designed for. And this one is interesting. So there's a little bit of style in here, which of course is fun. You have a very small diameter wheel here. This is a 12-inch wheel, which is typical on Vespas. The scooter I'm going to show you today is the Piaggio Liberty. It actually has a much bigger front wheel, bigger in diameter. And what you have is with a smaller diameter wheel, your approach angle is a little bit different, but they give you quite a lot of sidewall here. So you've got a pretty beefy tire, nice and wide, that allows you to absorb bumps and also take corners. You've got a disc brake in here, as you can see, some gold color calipers in there. But what's really interesting about this is they use an upside down fork. Now the upside down fork is pretty unique. They use these on super sport bikes, they use these on more high-end bikes. It's not something they use on like the Z400, which is the typical traditional entry-level bike. So why are they using a fork like this? Well, let's talk about the advantages. The first thing it does is it gives you lower unsprung weight. So technically, that's a little bit of a sportier type setup. But the other thing it does is it gives you more strength up top. And then again, it sort of shows that this is not a little kid's wimpy, tiny little bike. This is something that can handle 2 people on it and can handle the forces you're going to put on it with having a little bit more strength up top. So kind of a higher end front here than you might expect for a bike of this price class. So now let's talk about the heart of the bike. So the first thing we're going to talk about is this is not a frame rail. It looks a lot like the frame rails on the high-end bikes like the Ninja 1000 or something like that, but this is just a plastic panel. It's a steel frame underneath. You've got a carbon fiber look up here, so they do a good job with the styling. Up close, this is a visually interesting bike, and that may not show on camera. But mechanically what you have is an air-cooled engine that is nice and low and mounted in a traditional motorcycle spot, so that balances the weight distribution front and rear. So that does a few things for you. You have a really neutral handling bike like this because the weight is low, it corners very well, it handles very well, it's very predictable, it feels nice and light, but also having that weight centralized on the bike allows the braking and acceleration forces to kind of be balanced, and it just makes a very predictable handling motorcycle. So if you're having fun driving in a sporty fashion or wringing this thing out, you have a bike that's made to handle that does well. The other benefit with the air cooling is there's just less weight overall. There's no liquid cooling, there's no rad in there, so you have simplicity and less weight to make it lightweight and fun. The other cool thing is they have the exhaust all down here. This looks a lot like something like the Versys 650 or the Ninja 650 or something like that. Your exhaust and all of the, the emissions regulation stuff is basically being taken care of right down there, and there's no point having a big pipe on here. They tuck it in out of the way. Again, that centralizes the weight, keeps everything low, nothing up here, and that also makes it fun to drive and gives it some style. The size of the exhaust pipe here is much larger than you'll find on the Piaggio Liberty that we're going to look at in a second, even though this is a smaller engined bike than that one. So let's jump over to the Piaggio Liberty and look at the same pieces on that bike. So what you have here is a larger diameter wheel. So this again is rare for a scooter, but let's talk about the advantages. A larger diameter wheel tends to have advantages in a straight line, keeping you sort of straight, whereas a smaller diameter wheel is great for that kind of darty kind of feeling. So if you're going on a long straight ride, like you mostly would be on the road, this is going to have some advantages for you. But again, it has a little bit less of an advantage in that sort of dirty kind of feel for changing direction, that kind of thing. Now, we're talking very minor differences, but that is a difference there. The other thing you're going to find is very similar looking brakes. You have a disc brake here. This one does have an ABS ring on the front. That's what this is. It's for your ABS sensor. So you have ABS up front on this one. It allows you to, or it prevents you from locking up that front wheel, which gives you a little bit extra safety and maybe a little bit extra, especially in poor weather performance. And then scooters have this natural advantage of not shooting the water from the front wheel up towards your feet. The wheels of course splash water out to the side, but your feet are protected in behind here, so it's going to keep you a little bit drier in poor weather. That's a big advantage of a scooter. As far as the front fork here, you can see this is a very traditional motorcycle looking front fork, and it is what we call the right side up fork. Now let's look at powertrain. So taking this close-up view, you can really start to see some differences in the design of these, and there's some functional differences. So again, the weight is all down low. The engine is actually in this area here, down low. There's actually storage space up here, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So you've still got a centralized weight area, but all of this is the swing arm. It's part of the suspension that kind of moves, as well as being your transmission, drivetrain, that kind of thing. So you've got a lot more sprung weight instead of the unsprung weight of that other fork that we were talking about. And you also have, if you look at the spring and the shock over here, on the Z125, it's a lean angle, it has more of a lean forward, and that centralizes the mass. They're not worried about centralizing the mass in this, so most of the weight of the scooter is in the back. That, again, is not something you'd want for a darty handling feel, but it's perfectly fine for a stable, normal bike. If you think about a cruiser style bike, a lot of the weight is kind of sitting in the rear on those bikes. This is a lot more, as far as weight distribution, more like that than it would be like a sport bike. So again, you start to see where this bike is going to excel and where it's not going to excel compared to the Z125. So seeing the design differences tells us what these bikes are for. This one obviously more of a sport handling vehicle, and this one obviously a little bit more of a touring vehicle, which is not what people think about when they think about a little 150cc scooter. But let's show you the dashes now as well, because the dashes are also set up for the specific purpose of each bike. So this is the dash of the Z125, and for what this bike is, this is actually pretty well equipped. Now you see a little bit of glare in there above the 10,000 RPM red line, but again, this is a bike that revs exactly like a super sport bike. If you look at a ZX6R, the bottom 4,000 RPM are really bunched together just the same as the bottom 3,000 RPM here. This bike makes its power up in the mid to higher end of the rev range and is a lot like a sport bike. So it very much is a sport bike, except a much smaller size. In the dash, you also have some cool things here. Your fuel obviously is low right now, so that's blinking. You've got a little dinky little clock in there that may be hard to read on your screen. Then you've also got some information down there like your trip A, regular odometer, and trip B, I believe that is. Sorry, trip A, trip B, and then regular odometer right there. You've got your speedometer. What you can't see right now, though, and let's just see if I can activate it. I don't think I can. Oh, there we can. There is your gear indicator. So you have a gear indicator because this is a manual transmission bike, and I am trying to shift while filming, which is not a normal way to find neutral. But there we go, there's our neutral light on, and neutral light's not there. So because this is a manual transmission bike, you even have a gear indicator, which is not something you saw on motorcycles until more recently, and something that you didn't usually see on a little small bike like this. But again, it really sets you up to enjoy this thing as a true sport bike. So now let's compare that to the Piaggio Liberty. So taking a look at the Piaggio Liberty here, we'll turn the key on here as well, and you'll see, whoops, one more click, there we go. You'll see a very traditional, almost automotive style dash. So you have a speedometer. The speedometer goes to 140 on this. The bike itself is around 100 or so, 100 kilometer an hour, top speed, 65-ish, give or take, depending on your weight and conditions and that kind of thing. But again, because you don't have a manual transmission, you don't need to show a tachometer. Because you don't have any gears, you don't need a gear indicator. All you need really is a fuel gauge. It's trip A, trip B, and odometer there, and a clock down here. You've got the warning lights that you would need, but that's about it. Your ABS light is flashing until you start rolling on a motorcycle or scooter. That's a typical thing to do. But again, much simpler, much cleaner dash with less information. But again, you wouldn't need a gear indicator when you have an automatic transmission. You wouldn't need a tachometer when it takes care of all that yourself. So again, a simpler dash fitting its purpose. So a lot of people would consider bikes of this size to be single person bikes, not something that you could take a tandem, take a second person on. But the reality is both of these are set up for passengers. This one has foot pegs right there. It has a little seat here, which is pretty small, but let's be fair, a lot of sport bikes have a small rear seat. So this isn't going to be a comfortable bike to take two people on, but to zip someone across town real quick, you can do that legally. The difference over here is, again, it's a small vehicle. It's not going to be something that you're taking people on for huge tours probably, but you have these flip out foot pegs here, and because this is on a center stand, I can actually show you what it's like, and I can tell you right up front that this is a very comfortable rear seat, especially for the size of the bike. It's more comfortable than many sport bikes. You've got the flip out foot pegs, and this one has the accessory top box on it, which works as a backrest for me, but it also gives you more luggage. There really isn't a factory option to create luggage space on something like the Z125, but this one has this as an accessory. It has under-seat storage and a glove box, and I'll show you at least the under-seat storage here so you can see what comes with it standard. There's a lot more storage on a bike like this, which makes this more practical for some of your day-to-day driving to maybe replace a car or do your regular things, whereas that is a little bit more about fun. So taking a quick look underneath the seat of the Liberty 150 here, it's a little bit different on a 50cc versus a 150cc. The 150 has a little bit more engine components, a little bit larger engine in there, and you can't quite fit a full face helmet underneath here. Now what you can do is hang one off the front off a little peg right here. Can you see that? Yeah, you can see that off the, there's a little peg here. You can hang that D-ring there and hang your helmet out the side there if you wanted to, but you still can fit a 3/4 face helmet in here. And more importantly, while you're driving, you have a natural storage space. So you could put your helmet in there when you're done, but take stuff with you. That makes this more practical by a long shot than something like the Z125. So let's talk about who these bikes are for and which one's best for who. So let's talk a little bit more specifically about who these bikes are for. I've talked a lot about this one being more fun, but I don't think that that should make you think that this isn't fun, because one of the key benefits with this is it is a blast to just get out on and explore. No shifting gears, no anything else. You just twist and go, and it's great for just enjoying the scenery and getting out. The other benefit with this is because it has this practical top box as an option, because it has practical storage under the seat, because it has more storage space for a second person, or more seating space for a second person, it becomes something that you probably take out more often than that. If there's a little bit of rain or drizzle in the forecast, you could still take this and your pants would stay clean, whereas that one, you're gonna get a little bit wet, you might get a little bit dirty in the rain. So while this bike here is absolutely more fun, like I said, the people I work with kept telling me, hey, this thing can wheelie, that's a lot of fun. This one here is something that you can have fun on a little bit in more conditions. So if it's a little bit windier, cool wind, you've got all that wind protection. If you're going a little further, this one's gonna be more comfortable to take, and you can really explore. So you have to decide what you want in your small vehicle fun department. Do you just want something that's a blast to ride, feels exactly like a motorcycle, just downsized and down powered so you can just ring it out and stay fully legal on the roads? Or do you want something that is maybe a little less fun as the actual riding experience, but still quite fun, but really your enjoyment is more about where you can go and what you can see and what you can pick up and take home and do that kind of thing. This one is going to be something that you're going to use to replace your car, to go various places, to explore things. And because they're both capable of that 100 kilometer an hour, around 100 kilometer an hour plus speed, other than the major highways, they are fully capable of going on secondary highways. So this is a great exploring bike where you can go from destination to destination. You can take what you need with you. This one here is less about the destination and more about the ride. If that's the kind of riding you want, this is what I would recommend. So that's my take on the Z125 versus the Piaggio Liberty. There's a few variations of Liberty, but this is the Liberty 150. Tell me what you think. Which one would you choose and why would you choose it? These are way more popular vehicles, especially in Europe, than something like this, but these have a cult following as well. So let me know which one you think it was best for you and what you like about it. And if you want to see these in person, make sure you swing on by Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, Jim Gilbert's Power Sports, where they are in stock. You can check them out for yourself. We'll talk to you again in the next one. Thanks.